This episode of Babylon 5 is called By Any Means Necessary. But for a more accurate title, you can call it Sinclair Handles the Bullshit of Others. It starts out simply enough, with Ivanova playing traffic cop. The kind of humdrum crap they don't put in any of the recruitment ads, I can tell you. You think it's going to be all Call of Duty meets Wing Commander, but it's actually drive-through window attendant meets getting yelled at by strangers. The dock workers are doing the best they can to speed things along, and they have to be further pushed to accommodate an uptight Narn pilot with a shipment for Jakar himself. Only the computer malfunctions and raises a transport too soon, so the two ships are going to collide. Ivanova quickly gives instructions to the pilot to avoid the collision, but he panics and crashes into the docking structure, and that leaves two dock workers trapped.
There's still a chance of a spontaneous combustion in there, so we're opening the airlock just long enough for you guys to get in and get out, okay?
Yeah, but should I change first? Because I'd hate to get this shiny suit dirty. They get the two guys out, but...
He's dead.
No, he's not. She has no idea what she's doing. This guy is the foreman's... I'm guessing he's the foreman since he runs things. The foreman's brother. And appropriately, Jakar is chanting a prayer. On the ball. And the home of the brave. Natoth interrupts to tell him about the accident. The pilot survived, but the cargo was completely lost, including the Jaquan Eth that he was waiting for. He's aghast. And it's got to be serious. I mean, if this was just his powdered rhino horn or whatever the Narn equivalent is, he would be outraged. He'd be upset. But this is leaving him like he was just confronted by the unthinkable. He makes his unhappiness clear at a meeting with Sinclair, Ivanova, and the union rep, Connolly, who is blaming this on equipment failure and heavier than anticipated traffic on B5. And Garibaldi gives them the bad news. This was caused by substandard microchips. They're going to have a hell of a time sorting this whole thing out. Plus, Connolly says that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and Sinclair knows it. After the meeting, he discusses it with the senator. It's a matter of budget, and the experts are certain that things will be fine with the new budget, the one that gives no money for new docking equipment and no money for more docking personnel. You know, we needed about 6 or 7 digits to solve this, but apparently the Senate is settling for just one on each hand. Meanwhile, Jakar is trying to get his Jaquan Eth and not having any luck. And what's worse, he has a run-in with Londo, teasing him about this Holy Week Jakar celebrates. Jakar can barely tolerate his bullshit right now, which of course only encourages Londo, but after he finally leaves, Natoth has some good news, bad news stuff. Good news, there is exactly one person with Jaquan Eth on board, someone known for being desperate for money often. Bad news, that someone is Londo. I wonder if the Narn digestive system is even long enough to swallow that much pride.
Why does the universe hate me?
You want that alphabetically or chronologically? Back in the land of Sinclair's misery, the word about the budget has gotten out, and it's resulted in a severe plague called the Blue Flu, according to Garibaldi. People on government contracts are forbidden from striking, see, so everybody just calls in sick instead. And after the break, we see all those poor, sick people so bedridden they can barely scream for blood. Garibaldi apparently draws the short straw because he has to head down there to talk to Connolly. Sinclair wants to discuss things. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot to discuss. Their people won't go back to work without guarantees, and Sinclair can't guarantee anything except that things are going to get worse if they have an illegal strike. As he explains, things are changing back on Earth. Right now, counting on public opinion is playing a very dangerous game. With the anti-alien forces growing more bold, things are especially problematic. A strike won't be met with, "This is unjust, do something," but will likely be spun into, "Those people siphoning away all Earth's money to make the aliens happy are so spoiled, they're breaking their contracts to demand what little money we have left." But the Union isn't listening.
Commander, you've got another transmission from Senator Hidoshi.
No, good luck, Chief. I'm out of here. While Sinclair is getting ready for his earful, Londo returns to his quarters and discovers the door open, and Jakar sitting there waiting for him. How polite of him. Lando doesn't miss the opportunity to gloat anyway, especially because the Holy Week is soon ending and G'Kar doesn't have his magic flower yet. And G'Kar finally asks Lando to name his price. Lando twists that knife like it was a corkscrew, but finally he asks for 50,000 credits, a ridiculous sum, and he is amused at G'Kar's outrage at it. This may be the Narn holy time, but for Lando, this is obviously Christmas. But for Sinclair, it's Krampus coming down the chimney. The Senate has heard rumors about this illegal strike, so the Labor Committee is sending one of their best negotiators to sort this out, Zento.
He has stopped this kind of thing before in many of our stations. I expect you to give him your full cooperation, and that includes providing troops if he decides the Rush Act is necessary.
I was going to make a Rush Limbaugh joke, but turns out B5 actually named the act after Rush Limbaugh, so I guess the joke is on me. Sinclair is concerned, though, that forcing the Rush Act could lead to a riot, so it'll come down to Zento working this out. Unfortunately, Zendo looks like the sleaziest used car salesman in the universe, cosplaying as Fonzie from Happy Days. It seems the only one having a worse day today is G'Kar, who has to grudgingly acquiesce to Lando's outrageous price. Only, Lando says, no thanks, I've changed my mind.
Consider this a very tiny portion of revenge for what you did to our colony on Ragesh 3 and to my nephew. Did you think that I had forgotten that?
You asked why the universe hates you. Well, it's not the universe, it's just Lando. And he has every reason to do so. The funny thing about the cycle of hate, it comes around again. Well, apparently the Holy Week is not the time for reflection because G'Kar goes on a tirade, including contemplating murdering Lando over this, and finally notes how Natoth is very effectively not giving a shit. She's not a follower of Jaquan, see. Her father was of a different faith, and she doesn't even practice that. It's an attempt to show that Earth is not unique in having numerous faiths, or absences of faith. But G'Kar, he has a fallback plan. The good graces of Sinclair. Of course, there's not a lot of good left in those graces, being stuck between out-of-control unions and a guy so sleazy he doesn't need to open the door, he just slimes his way under them. Zento gives the usual speech about the government not having any money, but Connolly points out the military budget for B5 went up substantially. They can afford to pay soldiers, but not workers. The reason the Union is unwilling to take anything on faith from Sinclair, Zento, or the government is that last year the negotiator promised them changes this year, so if the officials break their word, there's no reason to accept promises. Since all these offering are assurances from the government that everything is fine, they're not willing to go back to work. I disagree, but I spent 45 minutes on hold waiting to talk to someone at the IRS who assured me that despite my concerns everything was fine, and received a letter literally today that said things are not fine. So let me say, especially when it comes to governments, the old adage is true. An oral contract isn't worth the paper it's printed on. This is especially clear with Zento. He's supposed to be their top negotiator. What he does after trying and failing to wave the flag and offer platitudes is to threaten the Rush Act. Now, this would be the perfect thing for an actual negotiator to do. You make clear up front that you've got a big stick and you threaten to use it. And then you recess for the night. Give that time to sink in. You're willing to go that far. Then at the meeting, with that behind you, with things all stacked in your favor, you offer some minor concessions out of sympathy for the workers' plight. Small-scale stuff, cost of a Pentagon toilet seat kind of thing. And get the unions to grudgingly accept something small because you're graciously not demanding, as you have every right, that they take nothing and like it. And that's not even the work of a skilled negotiator, because even I know this. And the closest I ever got to a class in economics is buying the wrong textbook thinking Eco 101 was ecology. But Zento's idea, as we'll soon see, is to repeatedly say nothing and complain every time Connolly doesn't agree with nothing. They could have sent Ivanova in here for that, and hell, she probably would have done a better job of it. She's a lot scarier than Henry Winkler's stunt double. Sinclair stays up all night looking over his copy of the budget, only to get interrupted by Zento bitching about the strike now being made official. Oh yeah, that's worth a call at 5 in the morning, isn't it? That they removed their fig leaf, you pompous ass. After dealing with that blowhard, Jakal calls up. He wants help with the flower situation. Sinclair listens, then finally agrees to see what he can do, but Londo doesn't want to budge. If this was about Jakar's deep-seated beliefs, he could probably muster up enough sympathy to sell it to him for that outrageous price. But Jakar's real concern is that if he doesn't have it, he's going to look like an asshole. And Londo is always happy to help Jakar look like an asshole. Not that Jakar needs help very often, of course. After that, Sinclair gets to go to that meeting between Zento and Connolly. And as I said, he won't give an inch. If he had a mustache, he'd be twirling it right now. So, he says the Rush Act is going to get invoked, and Connolly and her people are prepared to accept that consequence. And they don't exactly seem like the passive resistance types. I don't think they're going to be linking arms and just waiting. So Sinclair is facing an inevitable battle on his station, the reporter badgering him over it, and Londo and Jakar storming in over the flower spat. Remember the backup plan? Well, it wasn't just asking Sinclair, it was also stealing Londo's holy icon of the naked chick. After a night of no sleep, Sinclair finally blows up and tells everyone to fuck off to neutral corners, and that's when the senator calls. At least he's not mad, but he does give the bad news. Despite his best efforts, Zento got the Senate to approve invoking the Rush Act. Despite the senator's best efforts, I mean. Although Zento is such a terrible personality, I could see it being that way. Shut up, I was on your side, and the more you talk, the more I think I'm in the wrong here. So Garibaldi gets the enviable task of having to try and arrest, well, everybody. Does B5 even have a prison big enough for all of them? I'm not seeing it. And you might be saying, well, obviously, Chuck, they're going to convert over some place for temporary mass incarceration, like when they locked up all the mutineers in a cargo bay. To which I say, oh yeah, a cargo bay. Like this place. Wouldn't it have been great if Garibaldi just walked over there and said, you're under arrest, and then locked the door? Problem solved? Well, actually, Garibaldi comes kind of close to that. He says they should pump knockout gas into the cargo bay and then arrest them all after that. But Sinclair has been cooking up his own plan. As I mentioned in Survivors last time, Sinclair looks for how he can win within the confines of the rules, so he doesn't just take the Senate's order. He actually reads through it thoroughly. He's the only one who sees the iTunes terms of service, sighs heavily, and then brews some coughing for a long evening before he finally will get a chance to listen to some tunes. So Sinclair goes in and says that this illegal strike must end, and that according to the order of the Senate, and in accordance with the Rush Act, he can do so, quote, by any means necessary. Therefore, since he can do it by any means, he chooses to reallocate funds from the military budget to the facility upgrades and dock worker compensation, thereby giving them what they want, and thus ending the strike as the Rush Act demanded. So everyone happily goes back to work, and Sinclair can finally go to bed. Or so he thinks.
What is it this time?
Jakar and Londo are approximately half an inch from killing each other.
Oh, and they need someone to give them a little push? Be right there. Sinclair shows up and tells Jakar to put the damn pagan deity back, and Londo that the flower has a certain chemical compound that would technically make it a controlled substance. It's a day for technicalities. And it's not over yet. Londo only gives up the flower because it's too late. The ritual has to be done when the light of the sun hits the mountain. So Sinclair points out that because light doesn't travel instantaneously, the light that hit that mountain 10 years ago is actually almost ready to hit B5. So Jakar gives his little ritual while the senator warns Sinclair that he won, but he's made some enemies doing this. But at this point they can be mad all they like, just so long as he can get some frickin' sleep. By any means necessary gets a stamp of recommended. It has practically no contribution to the ongoing storyline, but it's very enjoyable to watch. Michael O'Hare carries the role well and shows comfort with it, I think. Some of the characters are, as frequently happens on B5, a bit over the top. But, like I said, that comes with the territory. The script was actually written by JMS's wife at the time, and because he despises nepotism, he made her really work for it. And it shows. There's no dead space in this episode at all. Even the downtime is useful. And the shift in Jakar's relationship towards our heroes helps to signal that he's not the baddie that the early episodes suggested. He's not going to be the universal villain of the show, where every bad plot involves him. I'd have liked it if Zento, rather than being their best negotiator, as he's described, was just openly stated as being a political crowbar. For the same reason that if you say someone is the best surgeon, they shouldn't try to fix you with reflexology. But other than that quibble, it really works as an episode.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
We can't bust heads like we used to, but we have our ways.
Oh, you got it.